I'm Yvette Ruiz, and I'm a state project advisor here at the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And pretty much our talk is going to center on grant program requirements. I imagine that given, that you've been managing this grant for a little bit, some of the things that I'm going to go over may not apply to you, but nevertheless, what I'm hoping to get across with this presentation is what the award management process looks like, what are some of the requirements that you should pay attention to, and maybe refresh your memory in terms of these requirements. And hopefully, if you apply for future grants here at BJA, this presentation will help clarify some things that perhaps in this first round, they were not as clear or as highlighted or needed to be highlighted. Okay, so I'm going to move on. All right, so just a little background. As you know, our mission is to provide leadership and services in grant administration and criminal justice policy development to support you, state, local, community, and tribal justice grantees. So we work closely with communities, with governments, nonprofit organizations to reduce crime, recidivism, and unnecessary confinement, and promote a safe and fair criminal justice system. Our BJA director is Carlton F. Moore. He was appointed by President Biden in February 2022, and he leads BJA's programmatic and policy efforts. Our offices, we have 4 main offices. The policy office, which provides national leadership on criminal justice organizations that partner with BJA to identify effective program models for replication and infuse data-driven evidence-based strategies into operational model practices and programs. We have the programs offices, and that's where I reside. We administer state, local, tribal, and territorial grant programs. So we are the direct line of communications with our grantees, and we provide support and careful stewardship over federal funds. We also have the operations office, and this operations office coordinates all communication, formulates and executes the budget, manages contracts, measures grantee performance, and provides administrative support to BJA. And finally, and probably most importantly, one of the offices that we also have is a public safety officer benefits. This office provides death and education benefits to survivors of fallen law enforcement officers, firefighters, and other public safety officers, and disability benefits to officers who've been injured in the line of duty. There are 5 major strategic focus areas to improve public safety, reduction and prevention of unnecessary confinement, and interactions with the criminal justice system. We also have a strong emphasis on evidence-based data, research-driven strategies into the day-to-day operation, infusing those in BJA programs. Increasing program effectiveness with renewed emphasis on data analysis, and finally ensuring our organizational excellence through outstanding administration and oversight of all of BJA strategic investments. So today specifically, we're going to talk about the official award document, special conditions, looking specifically at budget and financial information that we want to highlight to you. We're going to also go over the budget clearance process, grants financial management training that is required for most BJA grantees, reporting requirements, some important reminders. We're going to go over GAMS and what are some of BJA staff grant monitoring activities? And finally, what's a good way to work with us, the program office, some tips for you, and grant-related resources. All right, so the first step in in starting our relationship is accepting the award on your side. And the official award document is obviously a legally binding contract between the federal government, and it must be accepted by the authorized representative. And like I said before, we know that you've already gone through the steps, but we just want to make sure that we're starting from the very beginning in terms of giving this presentation. So that's why we included this slide. So essentially, this is a contract between you and us, and if there's terms and conditions that must be honored in this contract, and we place award conditions to making sure that you meet all the requirements of the grant. And in some cases, if you're missing a document, or you need to provide, if your budget needs to be cleared with OCFO, there may be a withholding of your dollars. You may not have access to those dollars until you fulfill that condition. So applicants always have about 45 days to accept the award in Just Grants, and there are many training videos and resources on our webpage, and here's the link. And like I said, there may be program-specific award withholding conditions placed on your specific program. If you are in need of just understanding better any of this, you know that we are a resource. The grant manager is a resource for answering questions and addressing any programmatic, financial, or administrative concerns that you may have. So most of you are navigating all of have access to Just Grants and you're able to navigate, for instance, and see the awards conditions that I mentioned in the previous slide. So there is a tab in Just Grants that will provide a list of any withholding conditions you may have on your grant. And essentially, these can be grouped in two categories. One is perhaps you have an uncleared budget, and OCFO has placed a conditional clearance on your budget. And some of you actually still have a conditional clearance withholding. So now that I'm getting better acquainted with this portfolio of your grants, I'm seeing that some may still have some missing documents. I've seen a couple of grantees who were requesting a budget narrative, or perhaps also have not taken the DOJ financial training. So you can always go back to Just Grants and verify that you've addressed all withholding conditions. That would be a good assignment for you, just to ensure that everything is current in that regard. So if you go in Just Grants, these withholding conditions are going to be at the bottom of that long list of the terms and conditions of your grant. They need to be resolved and removed before funds can be obligated, expended, or drawn down. So obviously, I know that I'm just starting. I was assigned to be your grant manager. I believe we started this arrangement in November. So I've spoken to some of you, but not all of you. So please feel free to reach out and arrange a one-on-one with me if you have questions regarding anything, but especially if there's any withholdings on your your grants, because the bottom line is you're not going to be able to draw down your funds until everything is addressed. So we also want to bring to your attention that recipients agree to read and comply with financial and administrative requirements that are set forth in the DOJ Grants Financial Guide and 2 CFR 200 Uniform Administrative Requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for federal awards. So if you're new to federal grants, please, and especially to BJA, please make sure that you are aware of both documents and make reference to it when you have questions. But in a nutshell, what these 2 documents are saying is that you must conform to federal cost categories, have correct calculations, include only allowable costs, and accurately always identify subrecipients and contractors in your budget requests. And then something to note as well is reimbursement requests are based on an immediate disbursement of your funds. And this must be made within 10 days from drawing down the funds. So if, for example, if the funds are not spent or disbursed within 10 days, the funds would need to be returned to the awarding agency. So it's almost like a time, you need to request and expend the funds right away within that 10-day framework. Here's a slide on the budget clearance process. We know that there's a couple of scenarios when you initially, at the time of the application, submitted your award, your application. So usually OCFO will take a look at your submittal, and if they don't have any questions, they'll review the budget, they'll approve it internally, and then the grant manager will be able to release the hold on your funds. There's a second scenario where your budget requires clarification, right? You need to provide that information to OCFO. So OCFO will will send to you a change request GAM, and then you'll be required to submit your changes via Just Grants. And once you submit your changes, it comes back to me at the grant manager. And if everything's okay, I have no further questions, I'll forward it to OCFO for a final approval, and then also remove your withholding condition. All right. So in terms of the grants management financial training requirement, all grants require that the grant award administrator and financial manager that is listed in the Just Grant system take this training within 120 days of accepting their award. There are new grantees to BJA that may have a withholding condition. In this case, they are required to take it before the funding is released to them because they're brand new to BJA. So there are a few of you who need to take this training and have not done so. So please also look for that in your withholding conditions. Now, there were some updates done to the DOJ financial document recently. So usually the training certificate for the DOJ training is good for 3 years, but except people who have been who provided a certificate prior to January 1, 2020, they have to retake the most recent DOJ training. And the training is available here. And if you've not done that, you're welcome to enroll in that training. It's online, it takes about a week. There's many training modules. It takes a bit of time. and then they'll issue a certificate, which you'll forward to me so that I can have that uploaded in the Just Grant system. So in terms of reporting requirements, there are two types of reports that for this specific program are required. One is the semi-annual performance reports, and the other one is the FFRs. So essentially in this table, there is a scheme that shows you like the FFRs, they're submitted quarterly. These are the dates they're due. They're due usually 30 days after the first quarter of the year, and so on. This is typically the Just Grants role that is attached to this is the financial manager. Only that person can submit the FFRs. In terms of progress reports, the only person that can submit that would be the grant award administrator. And those are due twice a year. They're for 6 months for this specific program. Okay, so jumping ahead, there are some important reporting reminders for the FFRs and for progress reports. For instance, in the FFRs, you need to only report funds obligated or expended, not the drawdown amounts. You also need to ensure that funds that have been obligated align with the approved budget. You need to report every quarter, regardless of whether you've had any expenses. You also need to report cumulative amounts each quarter. And if you, for instance, in your most recent report, there was an error or something that was submitted that was not correct, you may request the Office of the Chief Financial Officer to return that report to you, and they'll do so to correct the matter. And you may also call the Office of the Chief Financial Officer help desk at any time with your questions or concerns. And here's their number and the link of where to call. In terms of progress reports, you really need to address the performance measure questions that were also written as part of the solicitation. We ask you to detail your successes and challenges, elaborate on accomplishments, and mention strategies to address new challenges. Report must be submitted even if no activities occurred in the reporting period. Just Grants, as many of you know, automatically freezes grants funds when your reports are delinquent. It's important to submit, timely, these reports on a timely manner. Also, late reports also influence how your award risk is assessed by OJP and may affect subsequent applications. So keep in mind that we work really hard in terms of managing our portfolio, and we track when grantees are late in their reporting, when they have not addressed their withholding conditions, and we give them a score. So please, be very cognizant that that may affect future applications, BJA applications, in terms of risk assessment of how you manage your grants. Now, in terms of grant award modifications, which we call GAMs, there are 3 types of GAMs that you may submit during the lifetime of your award. So the first one may be a budget modification if you have revisions that are maybe 10%, greater than 10% of your current activities of what you said you were going to do. You will be required to submit a budget modification. And also, if you have new subawardees or new procurement costs that or a sole source, you may require also to submit a GAM. For instance, if once your award expires, right, or you're coming close to the last year of the last month of the grant, and you see that you've not completed all the proposed activities, you may request a no-cost extension to finish with those deliverables. And it could be any time from 6 months to a year. That's reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So essentially, you may submit a GAM in a nutshell for changes in key personnel, contracting out and subawarding, otherwise obtaining services of a third party. Okay. So in terms of grant monitoring activities, project officers, were asked to conduct desk reviews, site visits, and enhance programmatic desk reviews. So in terms of the desk reviews, I've been conducting those already for this cohort, and they're done via email, and essentially I'm looking at your electronic folder and Just Grants and trying to see if you have any withholding conditions, if there are any late progress reports or FFRs, and essentially I will contact you via email and say, can you address this? Do you want to set up a one-on-one meeting with me? And sorry about that. So I've already been doing that with this cohort, and you all have been very diligent in getting back to me, so thank you. What I'm seeing also is that there are a lot of staff changes in some for some grantees, and you need to spend a little bit of time just ensuring that all the assigned roles are current. So that's another thing that I'm seeing right now. We can also conduct face-to-face site visits in the future or during the lifetime of your grant. And right now, we're setting those up. We're just in the midst of that. Essentially, that requires a little bit more in-depth look at your both your financial activities and programmatic activities. Essentially, what we do is we zero in on what was reported, and we look for evidence that supports what was reported. And the same applies to the enhanced programmatic desk reviews. The difference between site visits and the enhanced programmatic desk reviews is that the third one is done virtually. And then there are other in-depth monitoring done from other outfits here at DOJ. They may include a financial review from the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. There may include an Office of the Inspector General Audit or investigations. So that's a quick overview on that. Essentially, here are some tips on how to work with us. Please go ahead and share all your updates about your project. We really appreciate them. We read your reports, but it's always nice to establish that more personal contact with us. We appreciate it. And we are here, always available to troubleshoot and talk through issues that you may encounter. We sometimes, especially if you are about to submit a GAM, or you're wondering if you can change some activities, we're here to troubleshoot those issues with you. And it's okay to email us, to call us, and to set up a meeting so that we can look at this in more detail. And if, for instance, you've raised a question to us and we've not answered back, please don't be shy and track us down and say that you need to talk to us. We are always listed in your grants management, in the Just Grants page. I know that there's a little list of participants there. Your grant manager is going to be listed there. So my name is listed there. And I know previous to me, it was Tahisha Beringer that was your manager. So as we reassign my name, you can now see my name. And it's also usually listed on the award document on page 1, okay? But it may change over time. So just refer back to the list of participants in the Just Grants page. And then finally, there is a list here of grant-related resources. There's a lot of training videos on Just Grants because we know that this is a fairly new platform. And so they spend a lot of time in making sure that there's a lot of videos on how to, how to accept your award, submit a GAM, change, manage your entity, have your entity manager like reassign roles in Just Grants. There's that video on that, on performance reporting, financial reporting, and the DOJ guide also on how to get that document. And then with the ASAP, as you know, that's conducted. The ASAP payment system is run out of the Department of the Treasury. They have a help desk there, and that's separate from us. But certainly here we've included some frequently asked questions documents and so on. And then finally with OCFO, they're there to also answer filing financial questions and everything related to anything, related to the DOJ document as well, the guidance document. And I think that concludes my talk. I don't know if there were a lot of questions. I'll stop sharing now. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Yvette. Really appreciate that informative presentation. We know that's a lot, and I should have mentioned that as I introduced you, both LISC and the Institute recognized that we had a number of grantees that were first-time federal grantees, which is why we thought, along with the transition from Tahita to Yvette, that it made sense for her to present here today so that folks could put a face to a name and get this information. We'll be happy to share, if it's okay with you, Yvette, a copy of the presentation following the event, so folks can have access to all those wonderful links. But would be happy to open the floor before we move to site presentations. If folks do have questions, please feel free to put that in the chat, or if you'd like to simply unmute yourself and ask your question that way as well. We'll take just the next couple of minutes to answer any questions grantees have. Thank you. It was so informative, Yvette, that we don't have any questions.
Perfect, but I'm here as a resource, so don't be shy and set up a one-on-one with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yvette. Appreciate it. So I'll go ahead and share my screen so that we can get to the next portion of our agenda today, which is site presentations. And so we will have LISC sites go first. So you'll see the questions here. I'll put these questions in the chat as well, and then stop sharing my screen so that we can see everyone as sites are presenting. But very simple questions, 5 to 7 minutes per site. Hope you could answer the following. Why did your site decide to apply for Rural Violent Crime Reduction Initiative funding? Briefly summarize your project and the work to date, and any unexpected challenges and successes encountered to date. And first up on the LISC end is Mifflin County, Pennsylvania, located in central Pennsylvania. And I will turn it over to Allison Fisher, who is the director of the Human Services Department for Mifflin County. And she and her team are going to spend just a few minutes to talk about the really great program they're standing up in support of a co-responder model alongside local law enforcement. Allison.
Wonderful. Thank you for the introduction. And as John said, we are a county government entity. We oftentimes write grants in cooperation and collaboration with other county offices or other community agencies that partner with the mission of the Human Services Department. And so we have been having many conversations with our local mental health provider and our local law enforcement providers about a need for services. And there was a model in an adjacent county that we were interested in. Some folks went and viewed that and decided it was a model that we would like to go after. So when we saw this grant possibility, I was particularly interested because of the rural designation, because we know that we do things a little bit differently here in rural America. And so I was really pleased to see that there was a grant that recognized that. And so we thought this would be a really good fit for the grant or the opportunity that we were looking to provide with the co-responder program. Applied, received the grant. Really excited about that. And because of the award, we were also able to write in for money for a crisis intervention training for law enforcement in our community. We have a goal in our community to have all responders, emergency responders, CIT trained in the near future. So, looking for ways to fund that. At some point, we'd love to have a full-time coordinator or at least a part-time coordinator for that program. But this is a good start for us. And I have Kristen Weiser with us today, who is our co-responder. I also have Whitney Yawn on, who is our fiscal manager. And I see Josh Gates is with us as well from Center for Community Resources, which is the agency that is has hired and supporting the co-responder. So I think that's our program. That's what we're doing. Kristen is embedded with our local police department in one of our boroughs. And we're trying to expand that into other departments in our county. I think I will let Kristen talk about some of the challenges and successes she's encountered, but one that I will say that we encountered right off the bat. And I really want to thank Josh and CCR for the good data collection they've been doing, because it helped us to see this. We did not expect the population that we were serving. We thought we would be seeing mostly mental health cases, drug and alcohol. And so when we put our planning team together, those were the agencies we had represented. We very quickly realized that we needed to have a representative from our local aging office on the team, because the bulk of the folks that we were seeing were aged individuals. And so I think I'll let Kristen have our few remaining minutes to maybe talk about some of the things she's seen as part of that.
Hi, my name is Kristen Weiser. I am the co-responder that works with the Lewistown Borough Police Department. And just to give you a general idea, the police department covers 2 square miles, and within those 2 square miles, we have about 8,500 people that they serve. And the big reason I feel the program has been so successful is that the men and women that I work with every day have really bought into it. And that is mainly because of 2 closely related incidents in neighboring counties where particularly 302 warrants, which is an involuntary commitment, did not go well. And our officers, the first goals that they set forward were to limit any use of forces during 302 warrant. So going to someone's house and making them physically go to the hospital, which we have done. It's almost to the point now, it's very unheard of for Lewistown Borough putting hands on or using any type of use of force to getting someone that has mental health concerns to the hospital, which, like I said, was a huge goal our officers had. That's kept additional charges, keeping the officers safe and keeping our public safe. When we initially started, I believe our first year, our initial goal was to have 100 community members linked with the program, and I think we're close to 350. So we more than doubled the referrals from our officers during that first year period, and it has since grown. And to the point that there are a lot of calls that I will go with officers, and officers will immediately make sure the scene's safe, and then they back away, especially when it's mental health relation. We've also found that the mental health co-responder it's just more than mental health calls. We have been assisting with domestic violence, drug overdoses, deceased individuals, just providing that mental health support across all sorts of calls has been really beneficial to our public, to the point that individuals in the community are excited when they see a social worker show up with the police officers. It immediately calms down the situation, and that's the main goal, is keeping everybody safe. Some of the struggles that we have really noticed at the start of the program is when it's appropriate to have a co-responder versus when it's not appropriate. Unfortunately, that has been kind of like a trial by calls that we get. We have done a much better job determining which calls are appropriate versus which calls are just unsafe to have a social worker involved with. And that takes a lot of communication between myself and the officers, what we're comfortable with and what we're not comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to make sure everyone goes home safely. Right now, Chief Clements, who's the chief here at Lewistown, has really gone above and beyond trying to find additional trainings for me in regards to safety for myself when entering scenes. That is something that we're still working on and still want to incorporate with our program. One of the bigger successes that's really not documented anywhere is just the support that it offers to the officers. They generally, if there's a bad call that I'm not involved in, they know my office door is always open. They come in, can sit down, ask questions, can go over the call with me. And I also help provide themselves, their families, additional law enforcement officers throughout the community, referrals for services that they might need, whether it's a child that might be struggling emotionally, or in some cases, we've had older adults, officers with older parents that needed support. We really do try to go out of our way to help our officers outside of work. So it's not, they're just not getting support here on the job, but they're getting support for themselves and their families. Because one of the other big goals we had besides the 302 was just supporting our officers better, because it is a very difficult job that they come into. And we've seen in recent years, they really struggle, not so much in there's a lot of great respect in our areas, but just the things going around the country, it has really weighed on our officers here. So we do everything in our power to support them and provide them that emotional support as well for here and at home.
Thank you so much, Kristen. The work you're doing is fantastic. And you might have noticed the question in the chat. And then I think, unfortunately, we'll have to pivot to our next site to be respectful of time. But the question from Scott, what are you and your team's response times of availability compared to law enforcement shifts?
So just very quickly, we've actually taken the data from the Lewistown Police call logs, and we have looked at days of the week, holidays, to try to put my availability at the same time. I work evenings, weekends, can come in at the middle of the night if needed, depending on the call. And my response time is actually very quickly. There are times that I will drive myself to a scene, but a lot of the time I am with the officers in their cars. So there are times where I spend up to 8 hours with the officers in their cars. And what we do, if it's a scene that is not appropriate for me to be at, not safe, I stay in the car. If I'm needed, they either call for me through their radio or a cell phone, and then I get out and join the call as appropriate.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you, Allison, and the rest of the team there at Mifflin County. We really appreciate the work you're doing and the opportunity to present here today. Moving forward. Oh, I'm sorry. Did we have someone jump in?
Yep, I just said thank you for the opportunity. I will have to jump off at some point here, so I just wanted to say really thank you for this rural grant opportunity.
Thank you, Allison. Appreciate it. So moving on, we'll get to the second site under LISC, Training and Technical Assistance to present. And for introductions of that site, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Matt Perkins, Program Director for the LISC Safety and Justice Team. Matt?
John, thank you. And thanks everybody for joining. I'm not going to talk for more than a second. because I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Oscar West, who's joining us today from the end of the world, or at least the end of the U.S. In St. Mary Parish, Louisiana. And Lieutenant West is heading an effort to implement a trust-based relational intervention model, which was developed by Texas Christian University, to youth involved in the juvenile justice system to help bring them back out of the system. And Oscar is moving to that from working as a school resource officer. They've had some delays in getting their grant going, but that's allowed him to build relationships and build on that SRO work to get the parish in position to really be successful with TBRI. So Lieutenant West.
All right, thank you, Matt. So again, trust-based relation intervention, Karen Purvis Institute of Child Development. As a school resource officer, we wanted to look at these funds to help us answer the why behind the behavior we were seeing with many of our children that were dealing with gun violence. One of the key things that Dr. Karen Purvis talks about is there's a need behind the behavior. So our thought was, if we could know the need behind the behavior, then of course you can change the behavior rather than not just the arrest, but then how, when we turn it back over to the parent, we don't see that child. We don't see that child again. One of the things that we are kind of excited by is the work for today. Is even before the grant opportunity came, we were already training teachers in this area. So I became a practitioner, and we've already trained over 150 teachers in this area, and would like to use and planning on using the grant funds to kind of work it kind of like CASA does within the court system, so we can start training other law enforcement and even the court system, so we can work along with the parents. Again, understanding the need behind the behavior gives us more of an opportunity to actually change that behavior. One of the successes that we're really excited about is we have a number of judges that even before the grant funds were here, begin to buy into the philosophy, because the truth be told, numbers don't lie. And where TBRI has actually been in place in some other parishes, we've actually seen some of our alternative schools to go from over 100 arrests to 0, which is not black magic, but something is happening to where if the numbers went from over 100 to 0, some of the challenges we get, of course, is the mindset, because when you start talking about principles of why behind the behavior, you kind of have to begin to balance the structure to whether we're shashing the kids. That is really for a lot of the challenge, especially when you're talking the mindsets of people like myself who are police officers. But again, because the numbers don't lie, we have not just judges buying in, but we also have other judges that are already practicing this in other parts of Louisiana that's also being able to, we're connecting judges with judges. My other challenge is, I'm sure no one else is having this problem, but staffing. Because what that means is I have to have someone to take my place so that I can do this 100% of the time. So technically, we haven't started actually even using any of the grant money until my position actually can be fulfilled. So thank you, Matt, for giving me the chance to just share what's going on in St. Mary Parish in Louisiana at the end of the earth.
Yes, and one other thing that I'd like to point out about your utilizing TBRI, which has been developed at a university setting, is that the Texas Christian provides you with technical assistance on the programming as well, because you found a program that's up and running and being supported by an institution.
Absolutely, it's evidence-based, and it's not just Louisiana; it's actually global. I'm just glad that we were one of the first ones to snatch it and say, let's run with it, to even use this program for that.
Great. And I'm really looking forward to that TTA from Texas Christian to lighten my load with y'all.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
John, back to you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Lieutenant. Really appreciate your time. I don't see questions for the loop, but please throw those in the chat. And if we have time at the end, but want to be respectful of our friends at the Institute. So I'll turn it over to you, Samantha, so you can introduce your 2 sites.
Great. Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. So just to be quick on the introductions here, our first site that we'll be presenting today is Franklin County, Virginia Sheriff's Office. We have Sergeant Megan Huston on the line. Franklin County is implementing a couple of different technologies to address the rural violent crime challenges that they're experiencing. I won't go into too much detail. I'll let her tell you about that. So Sergeant, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sam. Good evening, everybody. Sergeant Megan Houston. I'm with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office in Virginia. If you did not know, Franklin County is Southern Virginia. I'm not going to say Southwest. I'm not going to say Southeast. We're kind of in the middle. We have one county that is in between us and the North Carolina border. So we are in that vicinity. Now I found my notes. So our population is about 54,000. We cover 712 square miles. That includes land and water. We do have 2 pretty significant sized lakes in our jurisdiction. So got a big county. The county's broken down into 6 districts. We usually have 1 patrol deputy that's assigned to a district at a time. We're a full service sheriff's office. We do cover patrol, investigation, civil process, corrections, and we have an E911 center that's actually under our sheriff's office. We have approximately 85 to 90 sworn deputies. And then we have 25 to 30 civilian. A big chunk of those civilians are in our E911 center. So we applied for the grant because why does anybody apply for the grant? Because you get to get money for things that you need that is not in your budget. That's why we applied for it. So some of the things we've been able to purchase to implement, again, with us having such a large county, you know, we can be from one district to the next or have two deputies stacked up in one district because they're going to a domestic call. Or, you know, then we all know how this feels. We've got one sitting at the hospital with the mental health, and you've got this one on vacation, and let's God forbid throw the short staffing in there. So sometimes if we get a call, you know, unless it's a hot call or it, you know, an emergency call, then it could take us 20-30 minutes running code trying to get from one end of the county to the next. So we can't be everywhere, and we can't get everywhere quick either. So some of the things that we've run into is we have a lot of parks in our county, a lot, whether they're like just recreation parks, they've got ball fields at them, they've got trails. Those, when the warmer weather hits, those are target areas for outsiders to come in and have vehicle thefts. It's for whatever reason that is. We obviously can't sit at the parks and patrol them because again, we're going call to call nowadays. So one thing that we've been able to purchase and help us with some of that is surveillance cameras. They do not give us live feed. We do not have that set up right now. But it at least gives us footage, if we need it. And it also does actually work pretty well as a deterrent. We actually have a sign out there of, hey, you're on camera, and it's amazing how much that can deter people. We also use those surveillance cameras as kind of like pole cams. So we're working with the power companies to put them up in different areas in big intersections that we have, so that if a crime has occurred in the area, we're trying to locate a vehicle, a direction of travel, a little bit more identifiers from that vehicle. We've got more cameras that we can pull from that is not as prevalent in our community. You know, there are some cities that you go in that it's like every move you make could be on a camera. So we are trying to put those cameras where we need them the most in order to combat the crime and solve it, deter it, all the above. So we have gotten our surveillance cams. Another big chunk of what we have used the funding for is software for our digital forensics. We have a digital forensics investigator, and he is the smart guy that knows how to pull all of everything off of a computer, a phone, anything electronic. He works closely with Secret Service. He works with the marshals. He works with state police. He works with everybody you can think of. So we were able to get him some software that we had originally not been able to purchase because it wasn't in the budget, that can help him actually pull that data and compare that with the larger jurisdictions that are around us, so that we can kind of compare. And, as we all know, a lot of times you have the same criminals that are in my jurisdiction or in my neighboring jurisdictions as well. It all seems to go over the county lines. So we're able to use the software for that. And then the other purchase that we have made that we are pretty excited about, but hope to never use it. After the Uvalde shooting, one of the topics that came up was there was a report that law enforcement stated that they could not get into the room because of the way the door was. It couldn't be kicked in, it had to come out. Well, we all have the tools to ram and kick doors in, but we did not have any sort of like Halligan tool in order to get the door to open the opposite way. So we were able to purchase Halligan tools, which are the same things that firefighters use to get through doorways and get through anywhere. Essentially, it's a big crowbar. So we got our Halligan tools, and we also got handheld ballistic shields. I say handheld, but they're not the lightest things. But God forbid we ever be in a situation where you're the first arriving on scene to some sort of active shooter scenario, and you know that you got to go in to save lives. And now you're able to actually put the ballistic shield on your forearm. It's got a handle to it, and you slide it on your forearm on your non-weapon hand. And you can go in and you actually have a little bit of a barrier there ballistic wise to try to get you through. A big push on that besides Uvalde was we did put school resource officers in all of our schools this year. We only had them in the high school and the middle school, and now we have them in all 12 of our elementary schools as well, starting the school year. So we wanted to make sure that they had availability of resources like that as well on site. So those are the things that we have purchased. Again, with us, we have a lot of our crime stems from drugs, drug use, drug sales. A lot of our theft is stemming around they stole something because they need to trade it to get money to buy drugs. We all see it. So the jurisdictions that are around us, the counties and a couple cities that are around us, their violent crime numbers are increasing more than what ours have been. But again, all of that is bleeding through our county line. When they're going from the city that's below us to the city above us, they're driving through our county, and then they're meeting people in our county, and then they're bringing it into our county, and now it's just bleeding over the lines. So we're trying to do the best that we can to also work with those jurisdictions to combat that issue. Other than that, successes and challenges. Successes, the software has been ongoing success with different cases. It's always great to have that software to tap into everything electronic, especially since the world is electronic nowadays. And then the surveillance cameras, we have already gotten to pull footage off of them for different crimes throughout the area. Been able to locate, we knew that it was a light colored car, but now we can really see that it's a whatever that it is, we can actually make out more of what it is. does seem that it's a deterrent for crime, especially in our parks. So we're glad to have those there, especially when the weather warms up. As far as challenges, aside from getting over the initial hurdle of learning how to use just grants, everything's been fantastic. And I thank Yvette for that, because I was ready to pull my hair out with that system. And she was so kind to get on a call with me and my other grant manager and walk me through the system. So if you are having any sort of issue with understanding anything in that Russian language of a website, please call Yvette. She will help you understand it. But aside from that, I do not have anything else.
Thank you, Sergeant. We really appreciate that. And I know we're coming close on time here. So Deputy Scott, will you forgive me if we ask you to present at the next one? Okay. I'm getting a head nod, which I'm assuming means forgiveness. So yes, as the sergeant mentioned, they're doing quite a few things. Investigator Kern can veto me later for this, but I would think that if any of you are interested in learning more about any of the softwares or things like that, he's a very knowledgeable individual and be happy to help. And also they are using the cameras. As she mentioned, they're working on getting them installed, but they have several festivals and fairs in their counties that prior to installation, they use the cameras at some of those events as well, which was very helpful for them. So with that, I will turn it back over to John Connolly at LISC to close us out.
Thank you so much, and I will double the apologies. Deputy Scott will make sure to have the opportunity for you to talk about your work at the next event. So lots of follow-up, because I see we're right at 2 p.m. Eastern. MPI, or excuse me, the Institute and LISC are planning to conduct these rural roundtable events quarterly. But we will be sending out a survey shortly after today's event that really asks for your feedback on the format of future events, topics you would like to see discussed. Would you like to see different formats, breakout rooms, for example, with a subset of your peers, things of that nature? We really ask for your feedback because we want to make this space as helpful for you all as possible. We'll also be following up with a copy of Yvette's presentation and her contact information. And we also have developed a cohort contact list for sites that have been agreeable to share their information amongst the cohort, excuse me, and we'll get the first copy of that out to you all as well, so that you can begin to network amongst yourselves. And as additional sites agree to share that information, of course, we'll provide updated cohort contact lists as well. I believe that's it for follow-up. But John Markovich, would you like to provide some closing comments?
I will do that quickly. I think I'm off mute, I hope. So I think this was great. We purposely designed this program after the legislators were wise enough to appropriate money to address rural violence. We know that there's a lot of attention paid to urban violence. It gets a lot of media attention. It gets a lot of attention by researchers and academics, and it gets a lot of attention in federal funding. So this program, I think, marks a pivot where we recognize the uniqueness of rural violent crime problems. Sometimes they share a nexus with urban problems, but sometimes they're very unique. And I think we learned about that today. And certainly the delivery of services is unique. So I think this was a great start to these information sharing webinars, and it's building the community of practice. We want to learn from you. Well, we want you to learn from each other. And as we go through this, we'll be gaining valuable information that I think we can adjust our future funding efforts based on the experience and feedback you provide us, both formally, as was mentioned in Yvette's presentation, but also informally with our TTA providers, LISC, and the National Police Institute. So thanks. And with respect to your time, I'm going to sign off here. So thanks all.
Thank you, John. We stand adjourned and anticipate follow-up materials from me before the close of business today. Thank you all.
Perfect. Thanks.